Nicole Witt is Executive Director of the Adoption Consultancy, as well as a frequent speaker on adoption and infertility. The Adoption Consultancy is an unbiased resource serving pre-adoptive families by providing them with the education, information, and guidance they need to safely adopt a newborn, usually within 3 to 12 months. Nicole has helped hundreds of people to realize their dream of becoming parents.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to welcome you to Adopt with Ease, how to adopt quickly, less expensively, and more successfully. I really want to thank you for being here, but more importantly, I want you to acknowledge yourselves for being here. Some people say that 80% of success in life is just showing up. Well, I can't imagine where that could be more true than when it comes to taking the first step in something so life-changing as adoption. So give yourselves the credit you deserve for making the time to attend this teleseminar. The information I'm going to share with you today is from years of experience, conversations with dozens of agencies and hundreds of birth mothers and adoptive parents. It's been my full-time job for years. Therefore, it's just unrealistic that typical pre-adoptive parents, while managing everything else in their lives, would be able to gather this level of information, even if they were willing to spend years doing so. And it's the kind of insight that can only be gleaned from time and real world experience. You just can't get the same level of learning from adoption books, blogs, posts, podcasts, or social media groups. So having spoken at numerous groups and through my work with clients, I've been privileged to share this information with thousands of others, thereby helping them to adopt safely and quickly, on average in about 6 months. So by the time we're done here, you'll have the information you'll need to proactively approach your adoption journey, armed with the knowledge and understanding that most pre-adoptive parents don't have. This will enable you to begin or grow your family safely and quickly without wasting money in the process. In terms of what we're going to cover today, first I want to tell you my personal story so you know why I'm so passionate about this. Second, we'll cover whether or not it's possible for you to adopt the type of child you want. Then we'll get into a couple of key tips for creating a personal profile that will really speak to expectant mothers. And you may have heard this in some other sessions today, but I just want to start by kind of clarifying that terminology. And in adoption, when people talk about expectant moms, they're talking about potential birth moms, women who are making an adoption plan but have not yet given birth and signed the consents. Once they've signed the consents, that's when they become birth mothers. So I just want to clarify that because some potential adoptive parents also think of themselves as expectant mothers, so I want to avoid any confusion. We'll end with discussing how to make sure that your profile gets the visibility it needs to get you selected quickly. In terms of what I do now, I run the Adoption Consultancy, and quite simply, I tell people we're kind of like wedding planners for adoption. So as mentioned, I help prospective parents safely and quickly adopt newborns, and to do so with as little stress as possible, so they can really focus on the joy of adoption. Not many people are familiar with consultants. A lot of people confuse them with facilitators. An important difference is that facilitators get paid to match their clients with expectant mothers. They do outreach for expectant mothers and they make those matches. They are highly regulated in some states and completely illegal in other states. So you need to be aware of your state laws. Consultants don't work with expectant mothers at all. We work exclusively with and for the pre-adoptive parents. So that's an important difference. And depending on the level of service that clients select, part of what we do is connect you with reputable adoption agencies and attorneys, and they are the ones who work with the expectant parents and do the matching. So really important to understand that. Okay, so in terms of how I got into this work, I'd really like to tell you a little bit about my personal story. When I was 31 years old, Chris and I got married, and about a month into our marriage, we found out that we weren't going to be able to get pregnant. I'm a carrier of Fragile X syndrome, and one of the side effects of that is, as they called it at the time, diminished ovarian reserve. I remember clearly sitting alone across the desk from the doctor at the one appointment that Chris couldn't attend, and the doctor kind of looked over his glasses at me and said, Nicole, you have less than 0.5% chance of ever having a biological child. Now, you would think that that would sound pretty close to zero to most people, but Chris and I decided that we had to try at least one time. So we started immediately with an IVF cycle, which was a complete failure. After the first check at day 7, the nurse called me and said that my body just wasn't responding at all. Nothing, nada, zilch. And Chris and I were the only ones that were surprised by that. So after that, we decided to move forward with an egg donor. And we chose to go through this very difficult, expensive, and risky process because of some of the myths I believed about adoption. I believe that it takes years to adopt a healthy baby. I believe that a birth mother could show up on your doorstep and take the child back. And although I'm ashamed to admit it now, in the recesses of my heart, I believe that I just wouldn't love that child in the same way. Now, I ended up having my 2 incredible children, the joys of my life, as the result of the incredible generosity of the egg donor. So I don't ever, of course, for one moment regret that decision. However, I've since come to learn that all those beliefs that I had about adoption were simply flat out false. And in fact, the reality was so surprising to me and is so wonderful that I've since dedicated my career over the last almost 15 years to making sure that everyone knows what an incredible option adoption is. So I want you to know that when you approach it the right way, adopting a healthy newborn does not take years. Sometimes it barely takes a few months. And I want you to know that once a birth mother's rights are terminated, she cannot reclaim that child. And as a mother to children who are not biologically related to me, I want to shout from the rooftops that there is certainly no way you will be able to love that child anymore, no matter how he or she comes to you. In fact, I truly wish that when I was considering my options, I had not put so much pressure on myself to believe that a biological connection is always the best option for everyone, because in fact, it's not. So that's why I'm so passionate about sharing the wonderful news of adoption with you. So before we talk about how to adopt, I want to address one question that's probably causing you concern if you're just starting to consider adoption. And the first question that most pre-adoptive parents have is it really possible for me to adopt a healthy newborn? And often the follow-up question is of the race that I'm interested in. Yes, adoption works. I know that with everything you've been through on your family building journey, you've become conditioned to expect failure, but I'm here to tell you that adoption works. And that's true even if you're over 40, single, already have a biological child, etc. You may be feeling like clients of mine, Sarah and Ron from California, and after adopting the baby of their dreams, which for them was a healthy Caucasian daughter, they adopted her in less than 2.5 months. And after that, Sarah confided to me and she said, going into this, I thought I would have to compromise on something, but I didn't. And when she said that to me, it was really meaningful because I realized that most pre-adoptive parents feel that way. But let me reiterate, adoption works. Caucasian newborns, as well as newborns of other races, are available for adoption. You just need to be the adoptive parents that get selected. Now, in terms of the health of the baby, the stories of expectant mothers drinking heavily and doing hard drugs are usually exaggerations. Statistically speaking, babies placed for adoption in the US are equally healthy to all babies born in the US. These are not, the sickly drug babies. Heavy drinkers and heavy drug users tend to terminate their pregnancies. They're unlikely to pursue the emotionally draining path of placing a child for adoption. Of course, you should have a risk analysis done on every situation that is presented to you to be as sure as you can be. Now, although some agencies in some parts of the country will quote you long wait times, sometimes 2 or 3 years or even more, there are ways to be more proactive to make sure that even if other people are waiting that long, that you won't have to. So to be one of those people who adopts a healthy newborn of your desired race in a short period of time, you will need to have some key elements in place. And one of them is an outstanding profile. This is sometimes referred to as the Dear Birth Mother letter. The personal profile is similar to a scrapbook, and it's what the expectant mothers look at to choose the adoptive parents of their child. It's the expectant mom's first introduction to you, and it's usually the only thing she sees before choosing the adoptive parents. Therefore, it's critical that yours really stands out from all the other ones she may be considering, because you only get that one chance to make the first impression. It needs to communicate who you are, what your values are, what your life is like, and most importantly, what the child's life would be like with you. That's the bottom line to the expectant mom. That's what she really wants to know. If you don't communicate that, you don't really have much of a chance. So it's important to not just count on your agency's guidelines, which is a common mistake that people make, because they provide those same guidelines to everyone. And their guidelines may lead to a good profile. It might lead to a great profile, but it's not necessarily going to lead to one that stands out from the profiles of their other clients, because they give those same guidelines to everyone. So to them, and this is nothing against the agencies, this is their job, it doesn't make that much of a difference if you're selected or if one of their other clients is selected. As long as the expectant mother selects someone that she's happy with, that's a success to them, even if it's not a success to you. I have my own methodology for creating highly effective profiles. I've honed it from years of trial and error after seeing so many people create profiles based from information in books or online and how to do it, and seeing that that approach just didn't work. The reason why is that a profile is so highly individualized. A book or a website or a podcast can't possibly tell you how you can best tell your story. Unfortunately, we don't have the opportunity to get into that type of one-on-one guidance today. So after years of synthesizing this information, here's one of the most valuable tips that I can give you. You really want to hone in on detailed, memorable stories as opposed to general statements. So for instance, in a profile, a lot of people might say something like, I like to cook and read. Well, after an expectant mom reads a whole stack of profiles, that's not necessarily something that's going to stick in her head. But if instead you were to say something like, last Sunday night, I made my grandma's famous lasagna recipe, and then I curled up in front of the fire with the latest John Grisham novel. Now that's much more specific and memorable. It has emotion associated with it. It creates a picture in her mind. It has details she might really connect with. That's the kind of thing that may stick in her head long after she's read several profiles. Probably the best way for me to bring this to life for you is to tell you about clients of mine, Mike and Jen. So talking about their profile, pretty much like every profile draft that I see, people say, we live in a family-oriented neighborhood, which again doesn't necessarily create a very specific picture in your mind. So before I tell you how they communicated that same idea, but much more effectively, let me tell you a little bit about their background. They're from New Jersey. Jen was 35 years old, and she and Mike had been married for over 6 years. And they both had successful careers, but she had dreamed her entire life of being a stay-at-home mom. When they first tried to make their dream come true, they ran into difficulty getting pregnant. And after several infertility treatments, they finally became pregnant with twins through IVF. They thought that all of their dreams were about to come true. And it absolutely breaks my heart to tell you that they had 2 boys, Nicoles and Martin, who were born prematurely and died just a few hours later. After that experience, Mike and Jen were done with fertility treatments. And after 6 long months, she read an article about how I help people, and something clicked, and she picked up the phone and called. And when I answered, she said to me, you know, Nicole, when I was pregnant with my twin boys and getting ready to live my dream of being a stay-at-home mom, I never thought I'd even consider adoption. But when my 2 babies died, I felt like my dream was shattered. It changed everything. I've been searching for a solution, and when I read the article, I felt like I should contact you. So we started working together immediately, and they created a first-rate profile, which really helped the expectant mother to, again, picture what the baby's life would be like with them living in their home, in their neighborhood, and in their family. Um, and they actively signed up with multiple agencies, which is something that we'll talk about in just a minute. But again, I want to read you that point from their profile. Whereas, most people say we live in a family-oriented neighborhood. What they wrote says, Jen can't wait to make Halloween costumes to be worn with pride at the local Halloween parade. And Mike anxiously waits the day when he'll be coaching baseball and soccer teams the same way his dad did with him and his sister. And we're so excited for your child to experience his or her first visit from our town's Santa Claus, who rides around in a fire truck every Christmas and brings gifts to all the kids in the neighborhood. Right? So if you were an expectant mom, would you remember that story and connect with that family? Or would you lean more towards the people who say, we live in a family-oriented neighborhood? Right? So it really communicates sort of the power of those specific details and stories. So anyway, they had everything in place by August. Less than 6 weeks later, they got a call about Elizabeth, a potential birth mother, who had chosen them from their profile. At first, Elizabeth was hesitant to have any direct contact with them, but when she went into labor about 3 weeks later, she decided she did want to meet them and have them join her at the hospital. So you can imagine their excitement when they pulled up to the hospital and walked through the doors of the maternity ward, but nothing could compare with the overwhelming sensation that Jen felt when Elizabeth said, "Would you like to be in the delivery room with me?" A mere 3 months after completing their great profile, Jen got to watch her son being born, she got to cut the umbilical cord, and she got to be the first one to hold little Justin. And she's since told me that although having her son will, of course, never erase the pain of losing her twins, the experience of being part of his birth made her appreciate him even more. And she's finally a stay-at-home mom and values every moment of her new life. So this story really powerfully illustrates the importance of an effective profile. I can't emphasize enough that your profile is what gets you matched. Creating a great one is a difficult and frustrating process for sure, but give it the time and attention it deserves, and it will really pay off by connecting you with that right expectant mom. Okay, so if Mike and Jen can do it, there's no reason why you can't. So I hope you feel comfortable incorporating that tip into your profile creation. The next point is that it doesn't matter how good your profile is if not enough expectant mothers see it. Now, assuming your state has laws that are protective of adoptive parents, working with your local agency can be great. I mean, every great agency is local to someone, but don't just choose that path in a vacuum because you didn't consider anything else. A common mistake that people make is just going to kind of the closest agency, maybe one that they've heard about. They don't ask a lot about wait times. They're just kind of hoping for someone else to lead them, kind of how it went when they were going through fertility procedures. And that's the only agency they sign up with because they don't even consider that there are other approaches. So what we're talking about today is a much more take charge, proactive approach to your adoption. And specifically, I want you to sincerely consider signing up with multiple agencies and attorneys, possibly across multiple states. So again, let me bring this to life for you by telling you about Kerri and Mike. They were a childless couple who had been married for 13 years and wanted to have kids. They live in Maryland, where they're successful small business owners. Kerri was successful at everything that she had worked hard for in life, with one exception, having kids. And at 41 years old, and despite years of trying, she was not a mom. All of her siblings had kids. She had 9 nieces and nephews in all, 9. And Kerri was starting to feel left behind, like it was never going to be her turn, right? Sound familiar? So Kerri and Mike decided to pursue adoption, and they did what many people do. They signed up with their local agency. And there were many things that they didn't know. They didn't know that they could sign up with agencies in other states. They didn't know that they could sign up with multiple agencies at once. And they didn't know that there are many great agencies out there that have low enough application fees that it's financially reasonable to sign up with multiple agencies at once. So by the time they called me, they had been on a waiting list with one agency for 2.5 years. 2.5 years, and had not had as much as a single potential match with an expectant mother. Nothing, not a blip on the radar screen. So can you imagine how frustrating that is? So then they stumbled across my website, and I'll never forget the phone call from Kerri. It was on August 13th, and I answered the phone, and I said, "Hello, this is the Adoption Consultancy." And the voice on the other end of the phone said, "Hi, this is Kerri." And just from those few words, I could right away hear the tone in her voice. It was a combination of sadness and fear and hopelessness. I've heard it many times. Then she told me her story, and she said, "Nicole, I'm starting to feel like maybe we're just not meant to be parents. But my heart finds that so hard to believe because we want it so badly." She went on to say, "I feel like my life has been in a holding pattern for years. I've tried so many different options, and I just don't know what to do next." And not only was she downtrodden, she was skeptical and unsure. They'd already invested a lot of money in one agency and gotten nothing in return. She wanted so badly to move forward, but she didn't know how. Well, I couldn't heal their pain, but I went to work on doing what I could do. And one of the things that I did was help them create a really great profile so that an expectant mom would be much more likely to be interested. And I created a plan connecting them with several agencies so that a lot of expectant birth moms would see that great profile. Now, I know that, creating the profile can kind of be overwhelming, and it can be scary to find just one trustworthy, reputable agency, let alone several. But there are people out there who can help you with that. And it doesn't have to be me or my firm, but there are people out there who can help you with that. You don't have to go through that process alone, okay? So Kerri and Mike were matched with a birth mom on September 10th. After no news for 2.5 years, they were matched in less than 1 month. And that's not all. The birth mom was due imminently. Kerri and Mike hopped on a plane and were heading to the one encounter that would change their lives forever. Kerri nervously entered the nursery, kind of clinging onto Mike and not quite believing that this could have really finally happened. And she told me that all of that doubt disappeared when the nurse put her daughter in her arms and said, "Congratulations, Mom." Now, clearly, Kerri and Mike's situation was extraordinary. I'd love to see everyone's situation be so extraordinary. Now, no one can promise you that you can have your baby in less than 1 month. And if anybody does promise you that, you should run in the other direction. But what I can promise you is that you'll have a much better chance of being selected quickly if you're out there with multiple places, getting as much exposure as you can. So that's really the key point. Don't limit yourself. Okay, so I'm just about out of time, and there's so much else I'd love to talk about, but the tips that we've discussed today will put you on the right path for adopting quickly, successfully, and with as little stress as possible. Please feel free to connect with me via Facebook or via my website. We send out emails containing adoption tips and Q&A and success stories and all of that. So we'd love to continue the conversation with you. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the conference.